now a sewer system. Could you please let me know what steps are necessary to get this accomplished? Ronnie, you said you were going to follow up with the DN or the MDE, DNR.
To find out whether the chemicals in those chemical toilets would do anything to harm our sewage treatment facility, and the answer I got was no. They thought it was in such small amounts that diluted throughout it wouldn't matter at all. I still think, and I'll say this, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that North Point Marina, the comment they made to Brian that they thought they were about the last marina to do this, I think they're getting it mixed up with what your next item on here is that discharge, the water coming off of the travel list when they clean the bottom of the boats off. That was a state mandate, as you well know, at the marinas, that you had to start trapping that water that you use to wash the boats down. It was going down in the sewer system. I kind of feel like maybe they read that and thought we were talking about it. Because in my knowledge, I'm not saying that there is no marinas hooked up to our sewer, but if they are, we don't know about it, and we've never given anybody permission to do it.
Right.
So, and another thing that you probably also know is that I think the state still pays to have your pump out tanks pumped out.
Good deal.
Your holding tanks.
Good deal. Well,
So,
they'll reimburse you for, there's a ceiling on the amount of money. It's not the total, what you would pay to a company to come in and pour the product out, but they will contribute to that cost to help offset your expenses and having it taken out.
We were learning, I mean, it's definitely easier for North Point or your, whatever to put it in that facility. I mean, I didn't see the advantages to doing so, as you know, with that, just waiting for.
Well, I think if we
reimbursement.
were to go through the sewer system, I mean, that's where I had made a note of a policy, because we've got, as Chip had indicated at a meeting or two ago, if we're gonna keep continuing to issue credits for water, which is something that's been done for a long time, we should have something on the book that reflects the reasoning for why we give people credit. Along the lines of when this conversation came up, Ronnie had said, well, there are some marinas that are, the runoff is going into the system. So if we're going to do a policy, we should do a couple policies if that were to be the case. So I guess by the long story short, I don't know if it's advantageous to in turn have the state offset some of the cost. Again, it's not all the cost. It may be more advantageous for the marina owner to, if it's permissible by the town, to send it to the wastewater treatment plant, because it still may be cheaper in the end, even though you do get a stipend from the state.
well, I'm satisfied.
We get revenue from it.
I'm
That's
satisfied.
what I said, we would get money from it
We
if
get
it
money,
goes.
so somebody else wants it.
Well, the
Advantage
thing
to
is-
us. You know, I don't see any advantage to the marina, but it is advantage to the town.
Well, it's money.
So you see that.
Because if I'm not mistaken, Ronnie out in Wharton, it's when they have these honey dipping trucks that travel out there, I guess it goes to a collection meter. That's the only place in the county that I'm aware of that has the means to measure it when it goes in, and that's, I guess, how they do the billing. But in this case, I would think that it would probably be a meter put on at the pump house.
I think in the issue with the travel lift, where we're gonna hold that water and let the solids fall to the bottom, and then we take the water goes up to we have an easy way of measuring that, and we'll be doing it in our next billing quarter will show that. We'll put all we have to do is put a regular meter on the spigot where you hook where the marinas hook their power washer, and we will be able to get paid for the sewer portion of that amount of water. It's gonna be a little extra work for us, but we will gain some kind of money out of it, I'm not sure. But we've agreed to let them do that, and we have a way to monitor that because it's by the amount of water that they use. And then will be a sewer charge added to that. Now with this, because they're not using water, I think what they do, and I'd have to check into this, when they hook it up, there's a way that you have a pump that will pump this sewer into our sewer line, from their holding tank to our sewer line. And I guess I think there's a type of meter, we don't use them because we don't have anything like this, that shows how many minutes that pump runs, and then it's how many gallons a minute it pumps, and then you know how much sewer you've taken from these places. So There'll have to be some thought put into that, and obviously it would be at the marina's expense, I think, to hook it up. So I don't know whether, once they find out what it's all about, whether they would still want to do it or not. But as far as we're concerned, as far as I'm satisfied by the research I've done, that the chemicals in that stuff won't bother our sewage treatment plant.
And I guess that's always been the question, both with that and the stormwater runoff at the wells, because each have their own chemicals. One is more of a metal or copper-based type of, chemical that you would get through, and I guess the hold tanks is more of a, I'm not even sure what they put in there as a deodorizer to limit the odors. So I'm not sure what is the contents there.
But the people I talked to didn't feel like that small quantity diluted through our system would make any difference up
Yeah.
there, so. Go on
Okay,
with that.
if I
I
can
mean, you
just-
can tell North Point if they want to pursue it, I mean, we're okay with it.
Well, I
We've
mean,
got to
I would
figure out
think-
how to hook it up and how to build them, that's the two things.
I would think that we would probably want to have some policy which is reflective of
Do they
what type of
provide the
cost.
meter, or do we provide the meter?
No, I think they would have to
Right,
pay
that's
for
what, I mean,
everything.
it had to be language put, is this the first time that, I presume this is the first time it's ever been,
Well, yeah, because obviously there's nobody that's
We don't.
running any.
We don't have
sewer.
any kind of
We
program.
can't inspect all the marinas and don't know what, I'm just gonna tell you that if somebody is hooked to our sewer with that pump out system, the town's not aware of it and we don't have any knowledge of it.
Kate, is that would a mag meter be something along the lines of what Ronnie's talking about, something that may not necessarily be a conventional water meter because we're not running water? But yet if it were sewer that we're trying to measure, would that be the meter?
Well, it depends. If you need a sewer meter, you need a meter that's gonna handle the solids.
Yeah.
You can't use a mag meter that's just gonna do, that handles clean fluids.
No, it would be one that obviously would be one that handles solids, but.
Yeah, I'd
you
be
know,
a little
often you-
careful with that. Just, if it were me, I wouldn't be so quick to say yes.
And I think tonight, again, this is just a meeting where, if we decide that a policy in the end is something we want to do, I mean, I think that's what we're talking about tonight. And again, I don't think there's going to be any decision made.
guidelines.
It's just, again, do we want to take another, do we want to go to the next step, which is at the next meeting, maybe Ronnie could have some more information on a meter that does solids, and he could see what the cost is, and then, look, he may just say, I don't see a marina putting out what could be, I don't know, a couple $1,000s for a meter, I don't know.
Well, the
Regulations on it
You're
now.
also assuming.
But I
one
think
goes
before you
into
get to
tax.
the technological piece, I think you gotta deal with the policy question. I mean, if I understand this right, you're talking about the marina holding tanks.
Right.
To me, if you're talking about allowing one marina to basically hook its holding tank to your sewer system, why wouldn't they all do it?
Exactly.
Because.
Well, they will.
because
Well, no, I don't know
your-
whether they will or
Your
not.
utility charges are really based on water usage.
Right, but if there's
Once you tie them into your, you're gonna have to come up with an entirely new policy, and maybe even a change to your code,
Right,
to allow a connection specifically to gauge sewage coming into your system, as opposed to the way your system is set up now, which is really based on water usage.
yeah.
When they made the comment to Brian, I think, that, I think I told Brian that he could let him know that we have to look into it because we're not sure whether our treatment plant can handle that kind of stuff or not. Their response was, well, we think we're the only marina that's not hooked to it. And I'm still gonna go back and say, I think they're I think they're getting confused by maybe reading about the travel lift order.
But they don't have a travel.
No, but I think in them reading it, they were thinking that it was their holding tanks that we've been talking about.
Who brought all this up?
Now,
Well, the
maybe
only-
not, but they
Yeah,
did
I-
make this comment that they think they're the only marina in town that isn't doing it.
Well, that's easy
And I'm
to
saying, I
follow.
don't know of a marina that is doing it.
Right. Well, look, and again, not to put a whole lot of time in on it, because it's something that obviously does have some involvement as to how you go forth. I mean, the other thing you could do is you could simply, there could be some metering device that is what the Wharton plant has, and any of these vehicles that come into Rock Hall and pump up all the thousands of gallons of sewer, and then it goes out to the Wharton plant, we could collect it right here in Rock Hall. And again, I think from my standpoint, I look at it, it's a revenue builder.
One thing I went to keep in mind though, when you start getting into business of taking commercial sewer like that, there will come a day when that lagoon is full. Now, we may not be around to see it, I don't know how long it would take, but you gotta be prepared to clean it out at some point too, and that's gonna be pretty expensive operation.
Yeah. Joey, did you have a question?
I was just gonna say, I know if one just connects in, it's not gonna have that great of an impact on the whole system. But if one does, why wouldn't everybody, the question, and then would that overload the system with that much extra chemical that we're not used to having? And do we really wanna do that since there's already a way it
Well,
gets taken care
Several
of?
gallons of what, if everybody did hook up, this is the maximum that would go in.
Right.
Take that to the people and say, it's not just one, Tom's by name, Marina's good.
And the
you
other
have to
thing is,
produce
there's
the
only two
meters.
companies that haul this out. So, I mean, I'm sure these guys would probably give us some ballpark as to what goes out of Rock Hall on an annual basis. And, you know, again, it may be more than our system can handle, and we
And
may not
listen,
wanna.
for clarification though, when I posed that question to MDE and them, I said, now, remember, this, I'm talking about one marina, but we have a half a dozen. So figure that, and that, they still gave me the answer.
Well, we got about 12 to 15, when you figure in what goes outside of the town limits into the
That's true.
corridors.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
I don't know why you would wanna do it to begin with.
So what was the number, what number you give us that would hurt?
Yeah.
Way underneath that?
All right, well,
The
I
state
mean,
is already paying for part of it being pumped out. I can't I just don't know why it's.
well, I mean, but it's not, and you're right, I mean, there is an allowance that the state puts forth. It's not all of it though, and it's not even half of it. But it's, don't get me wrong, every bit helps in today's economy, and if there's some money that can help offset that cost, that's, because what the marinas have to incur is not just the disposal fees, but they got maintenance and all the other stuff that goes along with it. So, you know, look, I can't speak for North Point and the other ones, I can only say what I know, but, you know, again, these folks sent a letter in, and, you know, again, as we're talking about setting policies and establishing them, you know, it's a good time to in turn address it if we're going to, because I guess as we can now move into item number 6. Number 6 is, we've got the Clean Water Act. Well, let's just say the boating industry, in a short period of time, the Clean Water Act will be taking effect, and I think that's in March of 2015. And what that is any of the runoff, primarily, as Ronnie says, at the lift wells, must be collected. There is a zero discharge, and for marinas to be able to get a discharge permit, they have to have some means to show that they are either collecting it through some reclamation center, or they're gonna get out of the haul, wash, and block business with their travel. So, and there's a couple that's already on board. So we probably should, again, you know, that's another policy we should write up, because what is the means of, with the other marinas, I assume there's a meter at their spigot where they're.
Yes.
Okay.
Where they're gonna be, where the water supply they have is travel lift that they use. There'll be a meter put on that, and they'll pay sewer on that, just like they would at any other, at their toilet or anywhere else.
Right.
They'll pay sewer on that amount of water that's used through that power washer. Now, that was kinda easy for us. I mean, as for the town, once we got assurances that the copper and stuff wasn't gonna affect the treatment plant, and you were attended a meeting where we had the experts, and they all looked into that and said it would be
Well, that was,
okay.
I mean, you know, I spoke with Donna Moreau at the DNR about this, and she says it's at the discretion of your wastewater treatment plant operator.
Right.
Now, I do recall the meeting, yes, you talked about, which was, I think, in 2011.
And all of our operators on the county level or the town level and people we've talked to said that was okay. So that was a decision that was made to go ahead and move forward, allow it to take place. The state is the ones that have to approve the operation. In other words, they've got to be convinced that there's zero amount of stuff going overboard. Whatever the marine, I guess every marina's design is kind of different, and we're not in the business of.
Well, they will approve,
Permitting now.
I guess they're approving from the standpoint as to it's not going overboard.
Right.
But from our standpoint, we've got to have some policy in place that in turn determines, you know, what is it that we're receiving, and like you say, I would think that for all the marinas, it would be a universal arrangement where at that faucet that they'll be drawing from for their pressure washer will be a,
Isn't it just a second meter?
well,
Used like that,
Yeah,
there should be a third, fourth meter at a marina.
You already have.
But same policy.
Design
Right.
to lead you instead of letting every municipality just out in the wind, okay? This is what you
well,
gotta
the
do.
Maryland Trades Association though is saying, I don't think there's a lot of towns that are leaning towards this. I think the approach is novel, and not just because I come from the marina world, but I think if it doesn't affect our biologics at the plant, then I think it's a good thing that if we can help. But again, it's just another, I think, a policy that we've gotta put on paper so that any marina is operated by the same guidelines.
And we have an app, a form that they fill out when they hook up that says, gives us the right to inspect it annually. And we have to be convinced that they've got some type of a holding tank to where the solids fall to the bottom and be cleaned out whenever needed. And, so it was kinda easy for us to let the marinas do the design. And we had an easy fix as far as the charge was, we already have the language for second meters in our code book, and this is the same thing as a second meter.
Okay, so for the marinas today, let's just say the in-town marinas or out-of-town marinas for that matter, that already have a bill for a second meter on there, which is their docks, is there gonna be then an additional second meter?
Well,
on their
it'll
bill?
get this meter will get the same credit as your second meter as your initial meter. As the
Okay.
one that goes through your bathrooms and stuff, where you do pay sewer. On this meter, the only thing it will meter is the water that goes through your power washer, because all of that is what's going down in the sewer.
Right, and that's where you base your charge. So
And
you've
the
gotta have
charge
that.
will be charged just like any other
But I was
second
just saying, I
meter.
guess you
I mean,
got-
not second meter, primary meter, excuse me.
So,
Where it pays water and sewer. Right, your second meters are just,
So what meter is this then?
this is really another primary meter. I mean, it's
Yeah.
gonna be
Yeah.
billed as a primary meter because you're paying water and sewer. Where your second meters at your marinas only calculate the water you
Right.
use and is only charged water.
So really, this should be getting billed out as a second
it's different,
primary.
if this is something you all wanna do, I think we then need to look at your code to see what amendments may have to be made.
But I think
because-
we're already doing
because
it
you-
though.
Well, I'm saying then somebody ought to explain it to us, what's going on, so we can look at your code.
No, I'm saying, I think we're already receiving.
Yeah, but if you let me finish,
Please.
your definition of secondary meter specifically says for purposes of avoiding sewer charges.
Yeah, this would not be a second.
That is not,
meter.
so this doesn't meet your secondary meter definition, this is functioning like a primary meter, but your code only says every property gets one primary meter.
So that's why we need policy.
You need to amend your code.
Right. To reflect the policy that we would implement.
Right, well, policy to me is different than the code.
Well, I mean, we gotta have some basic guidelines for a marina, but if it requires amendment to our code, that will follow suit.
Listen, I guess it's gotta be written up a certain way so it's in the code
Right.
book. The way we would do it, I mean, it's only 5 or 6 cases for us here in the town. Maybe less than that with people with travel lists, maybe 4.
I'm guessing, Rodney, that we're probably looking at, my guess would be, if, of all the people that we receive the sewer both in and out of town, we're probably looking at, I'm gonna say maybe 8 to 12?
Yeah, but we only bill the in-town marina.
Oh, okay, cause you're, okay, well, right, in town. And then how many out of town?
With travel lists. More
Langford Bay,
yours.
San Emporium.
But Langford Bay, we don't bill for that.
County
County
June.
bills them, and that
June.
county
Langford
bills
Bay, we
more.
build it?
Right.
It's four without you, I counted you in the creek there, so.
In the Rock Hall building.
Yeah, so it's four.
And
How
well,
about
but-
Harrison Harbor, do they got a lift or hill list down there, or?
No, I think it was the railways, all they ever did have down
But the ones that we bill, until we get this language and figure out, I mean, the easiest way for us with the billing is when we go to your marina,
Right.
we'll read your primary meter,
I guess my,
and we'll read the meter on your travel. And we'll add the two together, and you'll get a bill for water and sewer.
I guess my question is then, if the marinas then outside of town are tied into it, the county already has some
We gotta work together.
mechanism to charge them for that amount?
I
Is
assume.
that right?
I haven't asked them how they're doing it, but I think it's basically the same way we are.